We're flying along, minding our own business, when we stumble across a planet covered in ice. Bit odd, says Neelix, as this was a trading hub for the area a little while ago. Scans suggest a little while was about 2 decades back, as that's when a solar flare changed the planet's weather and covered it in glaciers, as well as bombarding it in electromagnetic bad times. Those same storms would have prevented an evacuation of the settlement, and there's no life signs on the surface, so that's the end of that. Or would be if the planet wasn't hailing us. It's an automated signal from the boss of the settlement. He says they saw the solar fuckery coming and hibernated, with an alarm to wake them 15 years later so they could rebuild. Clearly that hasn't gone to plan, as they've overslept by a number of years, so we have a closer look and discover 3 faint life signs about 2 kilometers under the surface, along with a couple of corpses. Looks like shit went bad. Unable to resist the mystery, Janeway teleports the hibernation pods to Voyager. We discover Settlement Boss along with one of his mates who really needs to work on their skincare regime. Kim suggests there was no malfunction in the system, then starts poking it, which seems a little incautious given there are people plugged into it, but they're the explorers, I guess. Kim discovers that the brains of the people hibernating are still active. In fact, it looks like they're interconnected in some sort of shared virtual environment to keep them entertained while they waited for the planet's ecosystem to recover, something that the computer should have regularly updated them on. For some reason, they didn't emerge despite it having been safe to rebuild several years ago. Tuvok suggests the exit mechanism may have malfunctioned, meaning that the users are unable to escape the system, but Kim says it seems to be working. It's not that they've chosen to stay in because they enjoy it more than reality either. The doc tells us that the 2 corpses died from heart failure after what looks like long-term stress. The doc also tells us that we can't simply unplug them as the system is far too complex. The only way to find out what's gone wrong is to go in there ourselves and ask them. So we do. Kim and B'Elanna plug themselves in and, after being told by Janeway that she's pulling them back out again in 5 minutes, or if they detect a problem, we enter the simulation. They appear in a gaudily coloured environment surrounded by entertainers, who B'Elanna suggests are part of the simulation. Asking where the users are doesn't yield results, but Grayscale Pennywise introduces himself and guides them to a fun game which bears a remarkable resemblance to a guillotine. They think better of playing and try to depart, only for them both to be grabbed and Kim placed in padded handcuffs, presumably while Grayscale Pennywise fetches the leather dog mask. Just as Kim's about to die for the 2nd time in 3 episodes, Settlement Boss appears along with 2 others and tells Grayscale Pennywise that if he kills the newcomers, their friends will turn off the simulation. Concerned, Grayscale Pennywise releases them, and we have a little chat where we discover he's the AI running the system and can access the knowledge of those interfacing with it. This is interrupted by a terminal appearing in the wall, which is B'Elanna and Kim's cue to exit. Slight problem though, Grayscale Pennywise threatens to kill one of the users if they leave, just like he did for the other 2 corpses they found in the chambers. Janeway's done with waiting though. They can't find a reason why B'Elanna and Kim haven't exited the system, so they try to bring them out of hibernation manually. The attempt fails as the command is counteracted from inside the system, as though someone is actively fighting it. Back inside, we discover it's Kim. He cancels the wake-up procedure to appease Grayscale Pennywise, but resists his call to remove the terminal completely. Kim says that allowing one of them to leave is Grayscale Pennywise's chance to let the outside world know his demands. He responds that he has only one demand: to exist. And this, my friends, leaves us with an interesting moral dilemma. Let us assume that Grayscale Pennywise is sentient, or at least what most people refer to when they say sentient, which is actually a complicated melange of different aspects, but that discussion is a whole video in its own right, and we're not going to get into it here, so I'll continue using the term sentient. Assuming Grayscale Pennywise is sentient, and that sentience relies on the presence of one or more other sentient beings within the system, does removing those beings constitute the manslaughter of Grayscale Pennywise? Does the fact that those beings are experiencing trauma as a result of that connection give us the right to kill Grayscale Pennywise to alleviate their trauma? What if that trauma only began as a form of self-defense when Grayscale Pennywise was faced with ceasing to exist as the users tried to leave? I do enjoy when Trek gives us situations that, on the surface, seem quite simple, but under inspection, provide layers of complexity that each muddy the waters of those next to it. But, again, I digress. While Grayscale Pennywise considers letting them leave, Kim and B'Elanna have a talk to the users. They tell us the system was set up to adapt to their desires, that their thoughts are monitored and the system changes accordingly after a delay to process them. Grayscale Pennywise was created over time as their fears and concerns about the rebuilding process bubbled along in the backs of their minds before being fully manifested into the jolly little murderer he is now. He interrupts their discussion with his decision. B'Elanna can leave, Kim will stay. Try to interfere with the system and he'll kill them all. B'Elanna uses the wake-up command and leaves the system. After she's had a chance to warm up, we hold a meeting to decide what's next. To Janeway's credit, her first question is whether it's possible to continue the simulation whilst removing the users. Unfortunately not, the doc tells us, as the neural input from users is what shapes the environment. Instead, Janeway decides to look at minimizing the number of people interfaced with the system. Sending in another to negotiate would be unwise under the circumstances, so we start looking at alternatives. Back in the simulation, Settlement Boss is apologizing to Kim for getting him involved. This prompts Grayscale Pennywise into fucking with Kim, trying to trigger a fear response to force compliance. As he's about to get handy with a scalpel, the Doctor appears, admonishes Grayscale Pennywise for poor handling technique, then explains he's here to act as an intermediary. He says they may be able to use a simulated brain to allow Grayscale Pennywise to continue existing if he releases the hostages. There's a little discussion about the feasibility of it, with both Kim and Settlement Boss offering their thoughts, but Grayscale Pennywise pisses on the idea as it'll leave him essentially defenseless, and tells the Doctor to fuck off. Janeway receives this news poorly and begins planning a rescue mission. We're tossing ideas around. Are we sure we can't just unplug the hostages? Not without significant brain damage, says the Doctor. How about switching to a simulated brain without Grayscale Pennywise noticing? B'Elanna tells them no, as an artificial brain wouldn't be quite the same. The doc mentions that Settlement Boss suggested there was a way to make it work using a piece of the equipment, but this confuses B'Elanna as that particular system has nothing to do with the interface. Tuvok suggests this may have been an attempt to give us an alternative and, after some thought, B'Elanna realizes the system mentioned may be able to remove parts of the simulated environment, essentially removing the danger instead of the hostages. As an aside, points to the writers here for addressing the fact that Grayscale Pennywise should have been able to read Settlement Boss's thoughts by saying his attention was divided. Which is, incidentally, why the doc's going back in, while B'Elanna pokes around the system. Back inside, Grayscale Pennywise is feeling sorry for himself, a mood not improved by the Doctor turning up again. He spins a yarn about returning the hibernation equipment to the planet and giving them a cloaking device to ensure that no other visitors bother them, an offer Grayscale Pennywise finds intriguing. B'Elanna's using the distraction to get to work on fiddling with the simulated environment. It'll only take a couple of minutes, she says, so as long as the Doc can keep him busy, we should be golden. Unfortunately, keeping him busy is pretty hard to do when the things around him are literally disappearing before his eyes. Grayscale Pennywise sounds the alarm and accuses Settlement Boss of telling them how to do it. He's dragged away as B'Elanna is stopped in her tracks by a security system, presumably put in place by Grayscale Pennywise. She can disable it, but it'll take time. Time may be something they don't have, as Settlement Boss is dragged to the guillotine. The Doc's making a valiant effort to stop them, but it's a losing battle. Before B'Elanna can disable it, the guillotine falls, and the head of the colony becomes the former head of the colony. As one of the other users is dragged to join him, Janeway orders B'Elanna to restore the system to stop Grayscale Pennywise from going through with it. In the simulation, the celebrations are in full swing, at least until the Doctor arrives again. He brings an ultimatum: free all the hostages except one, or Janeway will turn the system off and take her chances at healing any damage caused. There's a sweetener to the deal, though. The one hostage he gets to keep is Janeway herself. Grayscale Pennywise agrees to the trade, seemingly taken aback that someone would choose to be in his company. We hook Janeway up and, after Grayscale Pennywise says he can feel her brain activity in the system, she enters the simulation. She gives a little speech about being intimately acquainted with fear, which does a pretty good job of buttering the guy up, and the hostages are released. While we wait for the neural connection to catch up and give Grayscale Pennywise access to her thoughts, they have a little chat. There's some back and forth on the nature of fear, and, oh, by the way, I'm not the real Janeway, but rather a simulation meant to trick you. The real one is hooked up outside so you'd feel her, but she never entered the system. Sucks to be you. The environment begins to fade and grayscale Pennywise along with it, as simulated Janeway tries to convince him, herself, and us that this is what he wanted all along, which, depending on your point of view, is either insightful or an attempt to lie to herself about the fact that she's killing a sentient being. End of episode.